Well, let me bring you on right now here. Hold on. Well, I don't know where the sports update went, but I do know where this show is going because Steve Forbes, who is now the winningest head coach in the history of ETSU basketball. You heard me. In terms, not so much of total victories. Madison Brooks is probably always going to have that, but a 714 winning percentage. You're an old ball player. You know that 714 means 5 for 7. That's your winning percentage from ETSU, all-time highest. The Bucks have now won after a 19-point victory against Tusculum. 7 of 8, I believe, as they head into their Southern Conference schedule. I guess the first question that I want to ask you, I really liked scheduling Tusculum if one is going to schedule a tune-up game. It's local, it's exposure. I also like it that you're playing it during a time where there are a lot of high school tournaments going on in the area, so it's a statement that ETSU is not forgotten the week after Christmas, because in years gone by, oftentimes ETSU did not play at home during that week and all this. So let me ask you, what benefits, though, are there in playing a local D2 team at this time?
Well, the benefit at this time, Marky, is just to play a game before we open up conference. And some coaches have different philosophies on that. Some coaches go home for the break, bring the guys back a day or maybe a couple days later, and just go right into league play without a game. I don't really like doing that. And so I prefer to play a game before we open up league play. So that's the benefit of that game. I've always played that game since I've been a head coach. And even when I was a junior college coach, I always wanted to play, a game and maybe 2 before we went into league play. I don't think we get a lot out of it as far as what we figure out about our team. I think that's already been figured out in the 12 games before we played that one in non-conference. But it gives us a chance to play before we open up league play, and that's probably the biggest benefit. And I do like playing the local teams. We played Tusculum a couple times. We played Milligan. We played, Mars Hill, Limestone. Really the only local team I don't think we've played yet is King, and hopefully maybe we'll work that out here in the future.
Well, would you like to play King? Because I know historically there's been all the talk about, George Pitts, and he would have liked to have been the ETSU head coach, or was he qualified? What about the fans that wanted him? And there was always rumored to be a little bit of hostility between Pitts and ETSU from whatever side and all this. And
you would know that. You would probably know that better than I do. I've met Coach Pitts a few times, and he's always been very gracious and a person that I enjoyed talking to. And so it just hasn't worked out. I think we tried maybe this past year, but we just couldn't get the dates. And that's one of the hard things for the non-D1 teams, is that those are the last 2 games we're going to schedule, because we have to hold all the dates for the Division I games.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that doesn't happen until August. And so I think in the situation maybe with them, it just came down to dates, and not having the dates that we had available. And but we try, and Coach Pitts has never said that to me, and like I said, I've always enjoyed visiting with him when I've seen him.
So there's no fear of, historically Arkansas won't play Arkansas State, because what would happen if Arkansas State ever beat us? There's no concept of, what would happen if King gave us a game or anything like that? You'd be willing to play King in the future.
Well, yeah. We
okay.
played Leeds McRae last year and almost lost to them.
Yeah.
Would I be mad? Yeah. Would it be the end of the world? No. The reality of it is, when it comes to RPI, it doesn't even count. The 91 games don't count.
Sure.
So it's like what it does is, we like to try to play 15 home games. And and our league allows us to play 2 non-Division I's. And so if I don't play the 2 non-1s, it's impossible to get 15 home games. And so we're playing the games to give our fans the opportunity to see us play. And I feel like that's kind of where we're getting to be, where our fans don't really care who we're playing. They just want to come watch us play.
Well, that's always the strength for a program. We're talking to Steve Forbes, the ETSU men's basketball coach. I do know that against the Pioneers, you were down early, 19-16, before turning it on and eventually winning by 19 points. There was also a bit of a run, an 8-0 run, I can recall, in the second half against Tusculum. Admittedly, I think that being disappointed with a 19-point victory would be a little bit much of a hard-nosed, stern taskmaster, but I'll ask you, were you happy with the way your team played against the Pioneers?
I was happy with some areas. I thought for the most part we defended pretty well. We had a couple times there where they had shot clock violations. They couldn't even get a shot off. I wasn't real pleased that they made 10 threes. Give them credit. They made them. I think so. Like I told my team before the game, you have to respect these teams when they come in. And I said, use this as an example. Is how think about how we feel when we go play at Kentucky and Xavier. We feel like that's a great opportunity for us. Well, they feel the same way about coming to play you, and so you have to respect that. And so I felt like defensively we were pretty solid. We out rebounded them. The game was never in doubt. And I let some guys play through some mistakes, maybe that in a league game I might not, but we gave them some minutes to play. And Bo just didn't get a play. He's battling an injury right now, so we were one man down in that department. And so, it was fine. I mean, the bottom line is it's either do that or practice. And I think we get more out of playing a game than practicing at this point.
And possibly establishment in the area as King of the Hill? Would that be any also added benefit of playing a local D2?
No, I don't.
Okay.
We don't recruit against them. I mean, it's
okay.
At all. I think it's just, it's just convenience for us to have those games and to play those games. And if we could get a local team, great. If we can't, then we go find somebody else. So, but no, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case.
Okay, I want to change the topic to what I thought was a very impressive victory against Georgia Southern. Very lopsided, the 19-0 run against the Eagles, who came in 9-3 out of the Sun Belt Conference. And I know one of the statements made after the game by one of your players was that you really take a lot of importance, or put a lot of importance on the first 5 minutes of the second half. Why do you do that?
Well, I think you set the tone, and it's funny. You can tell my age. I say 5 minutes, but really, truthfully, if you think about college basketball, I really should say 4 minutes because there's a media timeout every 4 minutes, so it could run into 5. But I think at the beginning of the second half sets the tone for the rest of the game. For instance, if you're up 10, I think we were up 8, something like that. If you extend the lead to 15, then they're going to have a hard time coming back. And then maybe now they start to have doubt. If you're up 8 or 10.5 and they cut the lead at the first 5 minutes to 1 or 2, then they're in the game and they have confidence. So, and then vice versa. If you're behind at half and you can cut the lead at the first media timeout, then you're in it. And if they extend it, it's going to get even harder and harder. So that's, the game's not won in the first half. It's not won, in the first 5 minutes, And, that's what we told our team last night. We're not going to have a 20-point play. They're not going to tip the ball up and be up 20-0. They're going to make some shots. It's a 40-minute game. But I do believe that segment right there is very, very, very important coming out of halftime.
Well, I know that you lost a player, Andre Edwards, to academic ineligibility. He did play in 4 games and was averaging 7.3 points a game. How big of a loss is Edwards going forward into Southern Conference play?
Well, when we start the year, I like to have everybody that starts. I tell a team this every year. I look around the room and I say, I hope everybody's here at the end. Now, may or may not be. And they control that. It's books and basketball. It's not basketball and books. And so, not to have one of our guys, that's always not a good thing, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, played 4 games. He played pretty well in those games, but there was a lot of games that didn't play him in. And so we have plenty of guys to step up and we have plenty of guys to overcome what he brought to the team.
Jason Williams played at the point guard position, and I know that it was the second game against Georgia Southern there. Tell us about that change. Why is Jason Williams playing a point?
Well, he's always played the point.
Well, it's his second game. Yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, we started him because when we went home to Detroit, that's his hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave him the opportunity to start, and he played well. And so we decided to stay with it against Georgia Southern, and it worked out great. Now, we flipped it around against Tusculum, and I don't know going forward. It doesn't really – I think some guys are better coming off the bench than starters. And for me personally, I'd rather have a team that starts and handles the ball well and defends well. I like bringing scoring off the bench.
Sure.
And right now, Jalen and Jason are kind of scoring at the same, but they score in different ways. You know, Jason's a better three-point shooter, and Jalen's a better driver. So we'll do what's best kind of for our team moving forward. But the reason why, to answer your question, was because we had played at Detroit, and that's his hometown.
All right. So let's see. Do you foresee him playing more point as the season goes on, or was that?
Yeah, I mean, he's our backup point,
okay,
or starting point. I mean, he's been that way pretty much all year long, and he's getting a lot of minutes right now. I think he's one of the, I don't know the stats, but I think he's in the top 15 in the country in three-point field goal percentage. He's shooting on 50% from three, so he's shooting the ball well.
Well, you know, you mentioned that you had a very deep team. The Southern Conference comes out. You mentioned earlier about the injury to Bo Hodges. Do you think what is the injury, and will he be back for Mercer?
Well, I hope he is. You know, he's got a bone bruise, and it's just day to day. Something that's kind of gotten, worse over time. I mean, sometimes those things need some rest, and if I didn't want to risk it, we didn't want to risk it, for the Tusculum game. And
sure.
I'm hopeful, that he'll be ready to go on Sunday. But those things are never my call. It's always the trainer and the team doctor to make those decisions. And so, I hope. But if he's not able to, then we'll never play somebody, to risk injury to him even more. And so that'll be something that we'll make that decision on game day.
Steve Forbes, the head coach of the ETSU men's basketball team. Tell us here, as the Southern Conference plays, who do you think are the primary teams to beat? When that coaches poll, who did you vote number one in the SoCon?
I was the only coach that voted Furman number one.
All right. Sibley.
I think Furman had the best team coming back. Now they lost their coach, but, they got the best five guys, in my opinion, coming back. Mercer would be right there with them, even though they have five guys back. They were under 500 last year, so I don't know. Sometimes having five guys back ain't the best thing either. Now they're having a good year, and they're going to be one of the better teams in our league. But I picked Furman. I really like Greensboro's team. I think West is doing a really good job. I like that. I think Lonzo's the best player in our league. Him and Sibley, those two guys are really hard to guard. Rhiannon Holland's having a really nice year at Mercer as well, but I have a ton of respect for Sibley and Alonzo. Sanford's another team I picked up there just because they got a lot of guys back. Now they've struggled a little bit, but Wyatt Walker, who's their best post player, hasn't played. And if they get him back, I think they're a lot different team. And, when you look at Wofford, who beat Carolina, beat Georgia Tech, I think Mike Young's one of the best coaches in our league. So I think we're pretty balanced about 1 through 6. I think Chat was playing better. Western Carolina has a win at home over App State, I believe. So the league is strong, and I don't think anybody in our league, Marky, is head and shoulders above anybody else. I think it's going to be a dogfight probably all the way to the end.
I agree with you there, and I agree with your sentiments on Alonzo as well as Sibley as well. But now, a final question I get asked. It was Ugly Sweater Day, game before Christmas with Georgia Southern, and it got me thinking, have you ever met Lou Carnesecca?
I've met him. Yes, I have. It's funny. The very first clinic that I ever went to, Nike clinic, was in Des Moines, Iowa in 1989-90, and Lou was one of the speakers there. And so I sat there in the front row. The thing about Lou was interesting was as you remember, he whispered when he talked. He talks real low and quite quiet, and so it was kind of hard to hear him. But yes, I have met him, and I know he's
He's Steve Forbes. He's got the best winning percentage in the history of ETSU among men's basketball coaches. 5 for 714. That's 5 for 7. And we thank you for being on. We'll have you on next week here. Tri-City Sports Now coming back. What we got here? A little recruiting talk, a little more talk on college football, and Chris Adamski at 1:30 talking about the James Harrison situation. Stay tuned. As always, thank you very much.